Hey everybody, it's Bust with 5 decks to try in the heart of the Huntress Variety Patch Eternal Season. And so, if you haven't caught the patch notes yet, the 4.8 patch notes were released yesterday. As this video was released, it will be active here in 3 or 4 hours after this video was released, but that was a very extensive patch. And so if you haven't seen it and need to freshen up, there's a link to our review video just a little bit below down in the description. Try to get you caught up on that. But with like 10 new cards and buffs, nerfs, and edits to about 30 or 40 more, it's most certainly a patch to kind of soak in a little bit before we dive into these decks. And so with that out of the way, the big highlight coming out of the 4.8 patch was, of course, the update to Vladimir. Now, my thought and feeling on Vladimir is that the old style Vladimir decks are all kind of garbage. The Vladimir Battle Scars style decks were never particularly good anyways, but if you're wanting to say, okay, let's get out here and play a game to where we play Scargrounds on turn 3, we play a Braum on turn 4, and then activate Vladimir on turn 5, that's only dealing 1 damage, right? It does activate our Braum, sure, but only dealing 1 point of damage isn't particularly strong. And so my thought on Vladimir is, what if we put this in a Pirate shell? So we're able to play a card like Legion Rearguard on turn 1, and then on turn 2, maybe we add a Crimson Pigeon and then a Jagged Butcher or something. And then as the game is kind of progressing, all of those units are capable of, number 1, being aggressive, but then number 2, just sticking around and giving us targets for Vladimir so that his ability can deal 3 or 4 damage and really come in and try and target a unit in a very strong way. And so that's the way that we've kind of selected this deck first. The Crimson Pigeon, the Crusty Codger, the Jagged Butcher, the Legion Rearguard, these can all take a point of damage, and they all cost 1 mana. And then our 2-drops add into the theme with the Fortune Croakers and the Imperial Demolitionists. The second thing with a lot of these units is they help us turbo level up the Vladimir, with the Crimson Pigeon's attack ability giving him a plus bonus, the Crusty Codger doing the damage to itself when it comes into play, and then the same thing with the Fortune Croaker, except that it gets to give 2 level up activations to Vladimir. And so we're looking to kind of be in this really aggressive piracy style space and then make a big tempo play with Vladimir on turn 5, have him come down, just kill off the opponent's best unit, or if they've been trading back and forth, there's a very realistic chance we can leave them with just an empty board, and then Vladimir is free to crash in, maybe use his drain ability. It all just feels like a very nice collection of cards to fit into this style of pirate shell. Now, the thing that I will say about this idea of using Vladimir as opposed to Twisted Fate is this should really lend itself to being good in kind of a more go tall meta, right? So if you're using Twisted Fate, you might find yourself being able to red card off 2 or 3 of your opponent's units, to where Vladimir is going to be much better if your opponent's playing a curve game and he can take down their singular best unit. But the difference between Vladimir and Twisted Fate, you do lose out on the utility that you would get from Twisted Fate, but Vladimir is a very real attacker. He has a big stat line and he has Fearsome attached to him, and he also has that big drain ability. And so we may find him in a spot to where he gets to deal, say, an additional 2 or 3 points of damage in combat as we shrink some of our units' health for the sake of damage. And so very interesting day 1 deck, and regardless of how tuned and proper and fit this deck is, if you're looking to get in a very quick ladder climb in the first couple of days, Pirates is always a fantastic deck to take into the ladder as players are trying to tune their deck and figure out the best way to use the new synergies. And so very strong day 1 deck. I expect Pirates to be at the top of the meta right out of the gates. Deck number 2 is Poppy Taric Galio. Here we are looking to feature Balin the Benevolent, and so on his attack ability, he grants your formidable allies everywhere +0/+1. And so my thing with Balin is you need to, number 1, be playing Formidables in a deck that actually wants them, so we aren't just playing a bunch of shitty Formidables just for the sake of activating Balin, because what if we just never draw him, right? If we aren't getting to activate his ability, then he's not going to be particularly good. The second thing is we want to be able to attack multiple times with Balin, right? It's very obvious to see that if you attack with Balin twice in the same turn, he gets to deliver his bonus twice and just be kind of a double power in terms of both his ability and the rally. And so what this really kind of drew me to was a Poppy Taric shell. the support units that you're playing in Poppy Taric already lend themselves to being very strong with the Formidables, and so Petricite Broadwing loves getting boosted by Tayari, and then it turns out Tayari plays fantastically with all of the other Formidables of the format, and so even if we're playing a Petricite Hound on turn 1, which on its own isn't that spectacular, Tayari turns it into a 4 attack attacker on turn 2, which is actually quite formidable, if you will. But then it still ties into the rest of the abilities that we're trying to do. And so it's not like we're all in on the Formidables theme. We have a lot of tie-in between the Formidables and Tayari and Esmuth, and then the Tayari and Esmuth also being good with the challengers, and then these abilities tying back into being useful with Poppy Taric, really giving the champions a bunch of extra combat survivability, and then if you get to pop off with the Mountain Sojourners, then all is well and good. So a couple of other notes with this deck. I think that playing 3 copies of Poppy, 3 copies of Taric, and 3 copies of Balin the Benevolent is just way too many 4-drops. And so to kind of thin out the 4-drop space, we have gone in and added Galio. He gives a nice bit of late game touch to this deck, getting the growth from Balin the Benevolent along the way, but then also giving us additional rallies to kind of double up on the Poppy and on the Balin the Benevolent abilities. The last thing I have to say about this deck is if it turns out to be a particularly non-interactive format, if this is a format to where, say, Norra stat-based decks are really popular, or if things like Jack's Ornn are very popular, things that are just trying to beat you with stats, like elites, and not have so much in terms of interactivity, this deck can really shine. It's very tough to find things that are more powerful than attacking multiple times with Mountain Sojourners or attacking multiple times with Poppy, and so if your opponent's not going to interact with you, then this deck has a real chance to shine and come in and be very powerful. I'm quite interested to see how this one turns out. Otherwise, if you're looking to take advantage of Balin the Benevolent, you can look towards Udyr and Cataclysms. It's another way to look to really power him up. Deck number 3 I'm interested in attacking here is going to be the Acolytes Reliquary deck. The new card here is going to be the Valley of Imitation. So when you play a follower, you transform it into an exact copy of you transform the Valley of Imitation into an exact copy of that follower, but it retains all of the granted buffs. And so the idea with that is you're supposed to be playing cards like the 2/4 Bandle City guy that when you transform a unit, it gives it 1/1 an impact. And so the Reliquary would flip back down, and then as you play a new card, it gets to keep those bonuses. But I was drawn to the Acolytes Reliquary because this was a card that was exceptionally strong. This card had to get super nerfed super fast, and Riot had to come in and really limit this deck's strength that was about to take over a format and caught an emergency nerf. And so the problem with the deck now is it just doesn't have the density that it needs for these Acolytes Reliquaries to really pop off. The construct of Desolations and the like generating these Ruinous Acolytes, now that it goes into the top 5, you can be limited in the number of these that you have on the board. But the Valley of Imitation gives us a way to have this unit over and over and over again so that we can get those additional bonuses. Now, the thing that I'm kind of interested in, I'm pretty certain in the case of this card, the Valley of Imitation, that it's only going to be a Ruinous Acolyte. I don't think that these bonuses are going to stack over and over and over again. And so what I mean by that is we have the Valley on the board. We play the Ruinous Acolyte. The Acolyte gives the +1/+1 bonus to all of the Acolytes everywhere. And then since the Valley is a Acolyte, it gets that +1/+1 just on the basis of being the unit. Now, I think as we go into the next turn, as we play a second Ruinous Acolyte, I don't think that our Valley of Imitation gets to double up on these bonuses. If it does, awesome. This deck has a lot of real potential to actually just super pop off, but I'll say out here from the start, my idea with the Valley of Imitation is that its power is providing us additional copies of this Ruinous Acolyte, and then if it does work in this sense to where it really pops off and it really gets double and triple and quadruple versions of the stats coming from the Ruinous Acolyte, then all the better. The ones that it will get the bonuses from, though, are the Arsenal. This is another place to where a Valley of Imitation Ziggs deck could be popping off, as the Arsenal comes on the board, picks up 6 or 7 keywords, having the Valley of Imitation then switch into an additional copy of the Arsenal should be enough to end the game. And so that will be another combo to watch after we get through this deck, is if we can't find something to do with Ziggs, Valley of Imitation, probably Talia, and then the Arsenal. Up next is one of the decks I am super excited for. I have been wanting to play Rumble so much since the printing of Returno Wrench, but we haven't been able to do it because we can't play Rumble in Standard. And so this is my kind of initial idea and thoughts of what we're looking to do with the Rumble deck. Since we are looking to play the Returno Wrench, we're unable to play the Vayne versions to where we're able to attack a bunch of times in the same turn, but we do have some workarounds for that. And so this is a more Draven-oriented style deck. I think this is more in tune with a deck like Draven Sion Vi than we would see with something like Rumble Vayne in the past, but I think this has a lot of opportunities for power here. Draven is just exceptionally strong in this format. Draven works fantastically with a Returno Wrench, just getting the free discards over and over again with all of your Mecha Yordle based cards and with your spinning axes is just going to be incredibly powerful. The thing that I think is going to help this really pop off is Returno Wrench does not work as shown on screen. This was recently just changed so that it gives the unit +1 health instead of impact, which is absolutely fantastic in my opinion. I think it's actually a buff to the Returno Wrench. It weakens it in the sense of the all-in style aggro decks, but as we're out here looking to be in a much more mid-rangey space, if we say play Squeaker on turn 2, discard the Returno Wrench, make it a 1/3, and then we get to follow up with Draven on the following turn. Now we have this like collection of really meaty units that are ready just to continue on with a very powerful mid-rangey kind of style. And so very interested in seeing how this one plays out. To kind of call back to what we were saying about Vayne, we do have the full 3 copies of Might in this deck. One of the core problems with Rumble is he doesn't deal damage through the opposing units. He needs Overwhelm to be able to actually deal damage to the opponent, and so the Mights give him a lot of strength there. And then we do have access to the Ruined Reckoner, potentially giving us the multiple attacks in the same turn. The Ruined Reckoner still just plays fantastically across the course of the rest of the deck. Attacking twice with Sion is quite fine. Just discarding the Midnight Raid, while not optimal, is something that we can do. And then even just attacking with a big Mecha Yordle multiple times or a Mighted unit multiple times, a lot of really strong and powerful things we can do there. Last note on the Overwhelm is discarding Sion does give Overwhelm to your strongest unit, and so the potential to discard Sion to give Rumble the bonus may make us want to actually have a split in here where we play 3 Draven's Biggest Fan, 1 copy of Draven and 2 copies of Sion, but we'll need to come out and hit the cues before we make some more definitive statements on that kind of thing. The last deck to call out that we have for your viewing enjoyment here is going to be a Norra-based deck. Some of the interesting things coming out of the Variety patch is Mr. Thrift adding in new boons as they get played, and so turns out the portals are a boon, and so anytime we activate a portal from Norra or from any of our various junk construct style units, we should be getting to shuffle more and more portals into our deck, really keep the chains going there. The other notes to call out here is Portal Scholar is now a Fae, and so we've really got this very heavy Fae package in terms of what we get from the portal units. Junk Construct, the Tea Maker, and Portal Scholar are all Faes, so we can now tie them back to the Gleaming Lantern and look to get a lot of additional cheapness of things onto the board in that way. The big thing that I like to add with that is going to be the Fae Sprout. We now have a very good density of extremely strong cards to pull off of the Fae Sprout, whether or not that is an additional portal generator or something like Papercraft Dragon or Rainbow Fish. A lot of very interesting and powerful units come out of the Sprout. The last thing that we're looking to try and really pop off with this deck is going to be the usage of Warden of the Tribes. As the portaled units come on the board, they may or may not be particularly good, the Warden of the Tribes ensures that they will be good. This is a fantastic game closer, just giving likely +3, +3, +4, +4 to every unit that we play, but it can realistically be bigger. Our deck, we aren't going really out of our way to activate the Warden. We're only playing the Fae and we're playing Yordles, but it's not unlikely to think that we can't hit at least one more subtype as the Warden of the Tribes does his thing. The other kind of things to call out here is Spirits Unleashed. Fantastic across the board in this style of deck, giving our units everywhere. The bonus means that as we summon units from the portals, they will get the +1/+1 from this. If we do manage to generate a card like Papercraft Dragon off of a card like Face Sprout, then we'll get access to the bonuses there as well. And so it just does literally everything that we want this deck to do. Some of the oddballs you'll see in here is we are playing Pack Mentality. Again, it's very easy for this deck to have a very big board but not be able to deal any damage. So this is kind of like Warden of the Tribes Light, Warden of the Tribes Big, however you want to look at it. Giving 6 units +2/+2 and Overwhelm may be a necessity to kind of come in and close out some of these games. And so that's it. That's our 5 decks to try. I can't wait to jump into the queue in the upcoming week, give some of these decks a go, see how long it takes us to hit Masters and get to the top of that ladder. And so, agree or disagree with what you've seen here? Like the decks, dislike them? Did I miss something in one of them? Be sure to let me know. Always glad to hear it. And that is going to do it for us today. So hope everyone enjoyed the video. Hope you maybe learned a thing or two along the way, and you had a good time watching. This is Bust, and we thank you for being here.